Hi everyone. Lovely to see you all on today's webinar. Thank you so much for joining us. It's great to see we've got a couple of registrations from around different states in Australia. Today we're going to be presenting on some work our team has been doing, which I'll jump into in a moment. If I'm staring off to the side, please forgive me. It's just where my slides are actually at in terms of the camera. So we're going to be discussing with you our Cultivating Futures, engaging secondary school students in the world of agricultural careers, introducing our work placement guide, which we've designed for teachers, career advisors and industry representatives. Just in today's webinar, you'll be hearing from Melissa Sullivan and myself, Nicole McDonald. We're members of the Agri-tech Education and Extension team. So we're a team at action research team at Seeker University. We're scattered up and down the eastern seaboard, and we work on a range of different projects, including today's project that is looking at building that talent pipeline into the agricultural industry. We're multidisciplinary, so we do have ag scientists, producers, HR specialists, business people with business backgrounds, psychology, a whole range of different kinds of lenses, and educators, of course, ag educators, to look at tackling some of our complex workforce problems. So. And when I say we're building the talent pipeline, our team works on projects from primary school all the way through to big industry-wide sort of visionary projects around diversity and inclusion. Today, we're going to be focusing on where we've kind of got that bend in the pipeline there and a key transition area, and that's working with teachers and career advisors to support the next generation to make those work transitions or transitions into study pathways, and on their way to building that career in agriculture. So the Cultivating Futures project, this is a project that has been funded through AgriFutures. It's a national project and has been mapped out in two distinct stages. So in phase one of the Cultivating Futures project, we were really doing all of the background research. So we took a case study approach looking at New South Wales specifically. And the purpose of that phase of the project was really to identify what are the current perceptions and knowledge of secondary school career advisors and educators around the career opportunities that exist in the Australian agricultural sector. What are some of the challenges they face in delivering career advice to the next generation, and how can we build better supports for people to be able to expand young people's perceptions of careers? Our second phase, which is what the work placement guide forms part of, is really around developing, implementing and evaluating a national outreach program that's been designed to improve educators and secondary school students' awareness, knowledge and perceptions of agricultural careers. So in the course of that program, our team have run activities in schools and with teachers and career advisors in every single state and territory around the nation, looking at how we can sort of, I guess, better improve these outcomes that we're striving for. And just, I thought before we jump into the work placement guide, give you a bit of background on some key findings in that phase one of the research. So right up the top, we really wanted to understand from educators, what are some of the barriers to delivering agricultural careers education? And what we found was it's not necessarily an intention barrier. It's not always a knowledge barrier, although that does exist there in just under 30% of our educators' responses. But that busy full curriculum, a lack of user-friendly resources, whether that's actual physical resources to do the work or financial resources used to do the work, and a lack of planning time were those three big key ones there. So our question was, how do we take the burden off teachers and career advisors to make this much easier to do? In terms of some of our findings around the perceptions of agricultural jobs, these weren't particularly surprising. So certainly when career advisors had perceptions that careers in ag were physically demanding, it impacted how much they would endorse that to a wide variety of students in terms of encouraging them to consider an agricultural career pathway. Perceptions of rurality, sorry about my stumble there, but that the only careers that exist in ag are out of the city in rural and regional communities also limited people's understanding of the opportunities that were actually there. That agriculture solely existed around farming, which of course we know is the heart and soul of the industry, but that also limited understanding of the opportunities, which we would say are actually scattered all through that agricultural supply chain. This would actually reduce the likelihood that educators would encourage students to consider an agricultural career there too. So really important we challenge some of those perceptions and understanding of careers. You can see here we've got a few more quotes from our survey respondents and our focus group respondents, that unless you had a heritage connection to agriculture, there just wasn't the visibility there for the world of agricultural work. People didn't really have an understanding of the skills, interests, and how well paid these jobs can actually be. And that old school thinking that we see sometimes comes through with how trades have been framed for students in terms of the opportunities on offer, that, you're not going to go anywhere with agriculture. It doesn't have a bright future. And some of these myths are perpetuated through some of, our labour market statistics. They're not always capturing that full scope of opportunity there. We know that, yes, some on-farm professions might be declining, but the professional services sector is absolutely exploding with opportunities. And unless teachers or career advisors had direct connections to the agricultural industry, they just weren't aware of what was out there. We know that connecting with agricultural host organisations is really time-consuming. It can actually be complicated because you're not just trying to fit, work experience for young people into your school calendar year, but those businesses have seasonal demands on them as well in terms of times that could be optimal for them to give great experiences to young people, or how would they design a work experience for young people at those different times as well. Our challenge as we see it, is not just around raising awareness and education, but it's how do we support people to help those individual students connect where their interests are, where their strengths and their values are, to a potential pathway into agriculture. And that's been sort of some of those challenges underpinning the development of the work placement guides we're going to go through with you today. So you can see here we're articulating the problem and the solution again. Time is an issue. Let's get those resources tailored for what we need them to be, not overwhelming information, and certainly right at people's fingertips to be able to access. Students are not exposed to agriculture very much, and this quote here came from a career educator in the city, noting that a lot of the students are not growing up with any of that background knowledge there. And so, part of setting up great work placements and experiences for students is actually giving them an overview of what they can expect in a work environment that they may be extremely unfamiliar with. And what those different diverse work environments may actually need or might suit them. And then I guess this challenge here, I don't think I have come across something that's awesome that includes information about that technology and those opportunities available to students to use regarding, agriculture really being on the cutting edge of solving some of the global challenges that we face today. Things like climate change, food scarcity, and complex supply chains are all really in need of talented young people to come and bring their diverse skill sets to look at solving. So we wanted to make sure that our ag workforce work placement guides were really focusing on that future-focused orientation and the meaningful outcomes that can be achieved through a career in agriculture. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to my colleague Melissa now to talk you through a little bit more of the logistics.
Welcome everybody, thank you for coming. So today I want to talk you through the work placement guide. So when we say the work placement guide, we are actually referring to 3 different guides that are tailored to careers advisors and teachers, to students and to industry representatives. So Nick's given us a bit of background today about where our first phase of research has informed this guide. So just to reiterate, the idea of a work placement guide is to actually support and enhance the collaborative opportunities between educators and the education system, and also the agricultural sector and the organisations involved. So what we want to try and do through these guides is we want to address the outdated perceptions of agriculture that still exist. We want to provide teachers, parents and students with basic understanding of the sector and the opportunities available to students within that sector and the career paths that are associated, obviously. We want to support teachers and careers advisors in particular by providing a really clear and simple step-by-step approach to engagement with the industry. So this isn't just any work placement guide. This is specifically designed for the Australian agricultural sector. And so it has those nuances and those sort of cultural ways of thinking and working, I suppose, in that sector specifically, to help us sort of gauge the readiness and the fit for students as well, students and employers, and also to help us gain a bit of traction in building those relationships. So that's quite important. We're also hoping to provide authentic real world agricultural experiences. So that's the end game, really, is to actually get those connections happening, get that real world interaction and that experience happening amongst the students and the future agricultural professionals, hopefully. So that is why we have the work placement guide. So in terms of the aim of each of the guides, so for industry, what we want to do is we want to enhance industry's connection by building agriculture employers' confidence and knowledge to support the development of agriculture's future professionals. Schools, by demystifying agricultural workplaces, hopefully, this guide will provide a comprehensive but concise plan to placements. So the idea and the challenge with this guide as well is that there is so much to think about and there's a lot involved in work placements. But what we're trying to do with this is we're trying to make it as accessible and as easy to handle as possible. And the same goes for the students. So what we want to try and do is give them the practical information that they need to know. So about what to bring, about what to expect, and about how to make the most of the agricultural work placement experience. So the functional sort of approach for this, so how will it help? What can we actually use it for? What we're hoping is that teachers and careers advisors will better understand the career opportunities and pathways in agriculture through this guide. Hopefully it will help them understand how to make it easier on themselves when they've already got so much to do, and also give them the confidence to connect with industry. For students, hopefully we're looking to support their skills and stimulate their interests and connect their interests to the industry. The reason for this is because there's lots of jobs. There's heaps of jobs that are available in the agriculture sector, and that is really what we're hoping to build, that pipeline, as Nick showed earlier, out of schools and into the sector and into those fantastic employment opportunities. For industry, what we're hoping to do is to actually provide an insight into what schools need, what students are looking for, and what teachers need to do to actually make work placements happen. So what we're really trying to do is showcase the benefits of a work experience or a work placement program, but also show industry some of the organisational cultures that go with our schools that will actually help ease that relationship building and help promote those connections as well between host organisations and between schools and their students. So this is the agriculture work placement framework. This has been designed specifically for this project. So what we've done is we've looked at the process behind this was we looked at a whole range of different work placement programs at all sorts of different levels of education. And then what we did was we analysed that, looked at the sort of steps that were embedded in each of these programs along the way. Through this analysis, we came up with these 5 stages. Now, these 5 stages are a basic framework that maps across each of the work placement guides. So they're consistent throughout in terms of if you're an industry organisation and you're looking at stage 3, then you can actually look over into the student guide at stage 3 and see what they're looking at too. So it's sort of hopefully without overwhelming everybody with too much information, there's that consistency of information through this framework. So stage 1 is engagement, and this is about how we establish those initial connections. Stage 2 is entry, which is getting students essentially and organisations ready for the work placement. Stage 3 is the experience. That's when they're on site, they're doing their placement, the host organisations are very involved and it's all happening. Stage 4 is exit. That's their transition out of the organisation and sort of back into school, which is a reflective kind of process. It also gives the opportunity for the host organisation to also reflect on how the placement has gone, you know, how the student has excelled, hopefully, and what kind of can be tweaked and fixed for next time as well. So we've built in that reflective process into this framework because we think that's very important to underpin a continuous improvement model. Stage 5 is employment ready. And this is really where we're asking the schools and asking the students to really think about what's next. So what is the job opportunity that's going to come next? How do I make these skills transferable? What do I do with this knowledge now? You know, how do I make this into something that's going to get me ready for employment? So that employment ready stage is really quite important in setting the student up for the future. So that's the agricultural work placement framework. Okay, so within that, as you would imagine, you would need quite a bit of information, and the information exchange between industry, school and students is pretty substantial throughout those 5 stages of the framework. So we've tried to minimise the number of forms because I do not know a single person who likes to fill out a form. However, we do need to make that information capture and information exchange process as simple as possible. So we do have forms throughout, and you'll see on this slide, this is our resource map. So again, those stages are really very important when it comes to being able to see across the 3 guides for the different stakeholders. And you'll see that the school guide has all of these resources and documents in it, but you will see in this resource map, what we've done is we've actually mapped only the forms that are required, for example, by industry, are available here and highlighted here. So you'll see that across the 4 stages that we've included for this resource map, there are only 4 forms. So that's good, I believe. The students, you will see that they have a little more to do, particularly at stage 2, which is the readiness phase. So the idea is that we're putting the work in when it's required the most, I suppose, when it comes to getting that information, making sure that we've got that really good fit between students, their aspirations and the host organisation, and trying to make it as smooth as possible for the teachers and careers advisors that are having to facilitate this program through their schools. So what we're getting to now is we're getting to the sort of the specifics of each of the guides. So the first one that I will start with is the now we call these Agri Navigators as well, because the idea is that they are a navigation tool for the agricultural sector. So we really want to sort of harness that and get that sense of adventure and sense of discovery happening through these guides. So the Agri Navigator for Teachers and Careers Advisors is really looking at that sourcing, that connection and the sourcing of agricultural work placement. So it acts as a bit of quite a holistic guide into providing basic information that's required to be able to, connect with agricultural organisations, to build relationships and networks throughout the sector. It also gives some insights and some information about the different career paths that are available and where sort of to start and where to look and build those relationships. That information is largely built around career paths, professional pathways, different roles that are available, different opportunities that industry host organisations can provide. And of course, we know that particularly if you're working in a farming environment, that farming is well recognised as being high risk, and those risks and safety aspects need to be considered and are considered thoroughly in this guide for teachers and careers advisors. So again, all of the forms for the full program are all provided in the Teachers and Careers Advisors Schools Guide, just for ease of reference. More than anything, it's all in one place in the appendix of that guide. So a couple of important things to point out about this, how this has been designed, and I guess some considerations that need to be made. One of the things that you'll be aware of, or coming from different states, is that legislation around things like safety and child protection are state-based in terms of the way that they are legislated to guide policy in schools. So we work through this guide with that policy. So it's designed to be read in conjunction with the school's work placement policies, which are informed by the legislative bodies in that state. Also, just a quick flag, the Fair Work Act also has its own category, I suppose. Its own section on work placements. So that is obviously the overarching umbrella legislation that we refer to and that we have it adhere to through this guide. So it's not designed as a replacement. All of the forms can be adapted and adjusted. They're all available in a Word document format, and they're designed to help and fit in rather than replace. So that's an important note to make. And just one other quick note on the Schools Guide for Teachers and Careers Advisors. One of the things that we really would like to see is really get that connection happening in the pipeline out of the schools, maximising those skills and experiences, and then getting, students and young people interested in industry. So establishing that connection and understanding what those students have done well, and then helping them through that stage 5 of the framework and into the workplace is something that we would really like to emphasise through this work placement guide. So this is just an example of one of the forms that we have that sort of gives us some information to do that. So this is an industry completion form. So once the student has finished their placement, the industry supervisor completes this very short 1-page form, but it gives the student something to work with in terms of where to next, in terms of how do I make the most of my employability skills? What have I learned? What am I going to do with that in my future? It's a big question. It's a tricky one for students, but this is what we're aiming to help assist that transition into the next phase of their lives. So the next one is Agri-Navigator for Students. Now, the Agri-Navigator for Students is really pitched to be a useful, practical, step-by-step guide for students. So it gives basic information. It gives them examples of the variety of different agriculture work placements and experiences that they can get. And it's also there to give them sort of the fundamentals. So what do I need to wear? What do I bring? Who do I speak with? What are my responsibilities? on this placement. So that's the Agri-Navigator Guide for Students. It has all the forms relevant to students. So this is an example. So what we have in this work placement guide, we have a few different examples of what work placement looks like. We've used this as an example. So, and we've used social media because every teenager that I am familiar with, and I have two of my own, are linked to social media somehow. So this is just an example of how something that is an everyday interest to teenagers and young people can actually be really beneficial and helpful. Those skills and knowledge sets around social media and connecting and with people can be really useful in a whole range of different agricultural organisations. So this is an example that we've put together to show students that actually what they know and what they are interested in is actually quite useful and relevant in the agricultural sector. Next slide, please, Nick. So what we would want them to do is be involved somehow in actually shaping up what their placement looks like. So this is an example of Frankie, who is doing this social media placement. So this is a form that we have called the placement plan or a placement activity log. So the idea of this form is that it can be used as an activity for the student to do prior to placement. It can be used as a planning activity. It could also be used as if your school requires a record of attendance, for example, then it could do that as well. So we're really aiming for multifunctional forms and very simple, as you'll see here, like it's a one-page, pretty straightforward form for a student to be able to complete on their own. We have included learning goals just because that's a really good thing for them to reflect on during stage 4 and stage 5. But also it's great. It's a great planning tool as well. This can also really help the industry partner to get an understanding of who the student is, what they want, and also then help the industry partner to plan the placement as well. Our last Agri-Navigator is for industry. So the industry one, again, is tailored slightly differently. What we're looking at for this Agri-Navigator is to provide insights into what schools require and to what teachers and careers advisors go through on a day-to-day basis amongst all of their other things that they need to do to make these work placements happen. So it is step-by-step. Again, it's very simple and easy to access. And it's designed to help industry become more aware of the processes involved in schools, just to ease that transition and to help build that relationship. So at this point in time, we have a feedback portal. I think Nick's going to pop in the chat a link to a Dropbox that contains each of our work placement guides. If you have not provided feedback, or if you have already and have additional feedback that you would like to provide, we would like to ask you to take around 10 minutes now, 15 minutes, 10 minutes to actually have a quick look at these guides, see what you think, and if you can please scan this code, it will link you to a very short Qualtrics survey where you can give us some feedback on the design of these slides. So at this point in time, these slides are in a draft phase. This is a part of our outreach efforts to get some feedback to make sure that they're really tailored and useful for the people who they're designed for. So we're looking for some co-design input here. So if anybody's got any ideas or reflections or suggestions, good and bad, we are very grateful for any contributions that you can give us.
Just to finish with, we wanted to again highlight where we see the benefits of this sort of work. We see the benefit of these sort of Ag Navigator documents as supporting young people to who want to host young students to really create valuable experiences for them. So just to give you some idea, some educators who really wanted to set up some great ag work experiences for young people who work in regions that have a thriving agricultural industry were really struggling to do that. They were sending students to Bunnings for experience instead, or the local golf course. They weren't actually getting out into agricultural businesses. So that's where we saw a real need to kind of demystify a little bit about the whole process for industry, school and students. We're hoping that, the work placement guide supports students to bring fresh ideas and enthusiasm and a willingness to learn, more about an industry which is actually really at the cutting edge of the future of work. We're hoping employers share their expertise with those young people, that we really expand people's understanding of where they can have a meaningful and purposeful career, and really try and reduce that workload in terms of, what is required to set up this sort of experience for young people. We know that the world of work and navigating a career or career self-management skills is all around building networks. And we know that work experiences, if we can get that first little taster of a workplace, what it does is it not just opens up young people's eyes to that particular role that they may be doing or workplace, but workplaces are all connected to the wider industry as well. So they start to actually see other careers. And we saw a wonderful example of that. We attended a teas meat processing facility who spoke about, they get young people in packing, but then really the world is their oyster within that organisation of whether they want to then look at becoming, moving up into HR, moving into a hands-on role into the business, moving into a strategic role in the business. That entry-level role is just the gate opening to that wider world of work. And that's where we see the real importance of great work experience and work placements for students. And finally, we just really want to highlight, because it's not always apparent to people, and career advisors without strong connections to the industry don't always see this, but ag is absolutely an industry that is one of continuous improvement. And it has to be, because we're trying to feed a growing population, which means that we're trying to do that with a finite amount of resources. So we actually need innovation to come in and step up here. New skills and experiences are absolutely part of that. We know that agriculture is in the top 3 job growth sector globally. We want young people to be aware that a career in ag is not just a career in your local community, but it can take you all around the country and certainly all around the world. And we know that in that university pathway, that there are 6 jobs available for every agricultural graduate. So the next generation is in demand, and it really is that base level knowledge of agriculture that can really take you anywhere. So that is part of what we're looking at with the guide today. Well, I'd just like to thank you all for coming along today. We really appreciate the time you've taken. Let's keep talking. We're really keen to, we're always looking at where we can value add to existing initiatives. We're not looking to replace or replicate, but value add where possible. And yeah, really keen to keep working with industry to kind of bridge that education industry gap there, that and form those strong partnerships to move the industry forward. But thank you all so much for attending. I'm